All right, all right. Welcome back to another edition of the Oner First Thoughts, the spoiler-free edition of the podcast where we just give our first thoughts, general thoughts on the movies that we're watching that week. This week we are talking about Wake Up Dead Man. This is the third film that Rian Johnson has written and directed in his excellent Knives Out trilogy. This film once again stars Daniel Craig as the infamous detective Benoit Blanc. I love living in an era where a character like Benoit Blanc is being created before my very eyes. Like it's so cool. Benoit Blanc feels like a character that is going to go on to have this really big legacy and be performed by lots of different actors through the ages. And it feels cool that we're at the ground floor of that. Like, like Hercule Poirot from the Agatha Christie novels, it like has had this big life, or James Bond has had this big life. Daniel Craig again played James Bond, and it feels like Benoit Blanc is this classic cinematic character that is going to go on and have this big life beyond Rian Johnson, beyond Daniel Craig, and we're here for the very beginning of it, like the purest form of it. And yeah, I mean, if you can't tell, I thought Wake Up Dead Man was excellent. I think all three of these films have been excellent. I just went back and did a rewatch. I just rewatched Knives Out and Glass Onion. In all of the reviews for Wake Up Dead Man, you kind of hear people, at least I keep seeing people online trying to wrestle with what they think is the best one. People will be like, oh man, Wake Up Dead Man was so excellent. I'm not sure if I like it as much as the first. I talk about this on the show with Kramer all the time, that I think it's weird that people are so scared to say that something new is better than the first one. If it's a newer, movie in a series of films, even if it's very good, no one wants to say it's like better than the original. It feels like you always have to say the first one was the best no matter what. This is a weird trilogy in that I genuinely don't see any value in trying to figure out which one is the best, because they're all so good. And having just rewatched all three of them, I thought that like my favorite would stand out. And maybe it sort of did. I think maybe my subjective favorite is Glass Onion. I think it just maybe scratches the most itches for me, and it is the most overall entertaining one. Like I find all of the characters and their idiosyncrasies and nuances in Glass Onion perhaps the most entertaining on a subjective level. But as far as just the craft of these films goes, as far as, the lead performance from Daniel Craig in all three of them, and the writing and directing from Rian Johnson, the cinematography, they're all just really, really well made. They're all just really well constructed. And it's really hard for me to actually try to sit down and go, well, here's why Knives Out is the best one and always will be the best one. I don't even know if that's a worthwhile conversation. This is a trilogy of films where I just feel like they're all just as good as each other. Like there isn't one that's like clearly better than the others for any clearly obvious objective reason. They're all really, really solid. And I don't know. I heard Chris Stuckman said I would watch 9 of these, and I was like, easily. If Rian Johnson wants to make and release another one of these every 2 or 3 years for the rest of his life, I'll be there. And if Daniel Craig wants to play that part for as long as he is able, I will be there. I will be sat and ready for the latest edition. I think it's becoming like, in an era where Hollywood just feels like it's running out of original ideas and everything is just based on old IP. And I understand that these movies are tributes in a very big way, and that they are sort of borrowing from existing IP, and they're both, it's interesting because it's at the same time a tribute to the genre as it is a kind of a satire of the genre. And I think Rian Johnson does that really brilliantly, that he satirizes the murder mystery whodunit tropes and genre as well as he does pay homage to them. And I don't know. It's cool to see. At the end of the day, these are still original characters and original storylines, and it's cool to watch them be done so successfully and know that, like, we're just at the start of it and the start of a potentially really great series. Without getting into too many details, Wake Up Dead Man is another film about faith, similar kind of like, it has themes. It's a very different film from Eternity, which was the film we did previously, but it has similar themes where it's like, it's got to walk a fine line and it appeal to an audience of believers and unbelievers alike. Whereas Eternity had to do that with the concept of an afterlife. It has to kind of walk this fine line of appealing to skeptics and people who don't actually believe in the literal existence of an afterlife, and also appeal to believers who do believe in the literal existence of an afterlife, and sort of be able to be on a middle path between those two viewpoints and appeal to both enough to not, turn anybody off too much. And I feel like Wake Up Dead Man does that well as well. It sort of walks that middle path between belief and unbelief, and has characters that make compelling arguments for each, and the practicality and pragmatism of each in real life. And, obviously, because it's a Knives Out movie, I don't really want to tell you anything other than like, Josh O'Connor is great in this movie. He's kind of more of the main character than Benoit Blanc is, in a similar way that like Ana de Armas was in the first one. They always have sort of a primary character that is not Benoit Blanc, who is kind of along with him for the ride. Like Janelle Monáe was that in Glass Onion, Ana de Armas was that in Knives Out, and Josh O'Connor is that in Wake Up Dead Man. But I would say Josh O'Connor, it feels like, just because of the structure of the script for Wake Up Dead Man, it feels like Josh O'Connor is even more of a main character than Ana de Armas or Janelle Monáe were in the first two films. And I genuinely think that's just a structural thing. There's a device that Johnson uses where it keeps Benoit Blanc off screen for a longer amount of time than he is in the first two films. But once he joins the film, they're definitely like co-leads of the film. And Josh O'Connor is excellent here, as people usually are in these movies. The movie is funny. The jokes that it wants to tell land. Once again, I had no idea where this was going. Rian Johnson is really good at doing this thing with these films where moments stand out to me, but I don't realize the thing I'm supposed to realize about the moment when it happens. A good example is in Glass Onion, and this is something that I'm going to spoil, so if you haven't seen Glass Onion, spoiler alerts for Glass Onion really quick. Well, not total spoiler alerts. Like, I'm not going to spoil I'm not going to tell you everything, but there's a character played by Edward Norton early on in the film who keeps saying made up words. And I noticed it the first time I watched it. He says, like, these people show up to an island where he has a house because he's a, multi-billionaire. And he says the sentence, he goes, let's just take a second to abbreviate this moment. And immediately when I saw it in the theater, I was like, what? What did he just say? And my thought, I noticed the moment, but my thought was, oh, Rian Johnson is trying to tell me as an audience member that this character is really pretentious and uses words that not a lot of people use. So I figured abbreviate, like, maybe it is a word, but it's the kind of word that only like a pretentious douchebag who wants you to know that he's smarter than you would use. And that's Rian Johnson's way of, and then he goes on to, like, Edward Norton says in another scene to Benoit Blanc, he's like, I've got the pre-definite detective in the world here at my disposal. And he said pre-definite. And I was like, again, another one of these words that I've never heard before. But I assumed what Rian Johnson was doing was trying to, like, I figured that as the writer, he wanted me to notice those things, but I didn't realize why he wanted me to notice those things. I thought he just wanted me to notice that Edward Norton was a pretentious douche, which he does want me to notice. But what he actually wants me to know in that moment is those words are made up, and Edward Norton's character is just really, really dumb. And, like, that's kind of the whole thing of that movie. That's kind of the big, one of the big reveals that leads to the big reveal in that film. And similar things happen in Wake Up Dead Man, which I won't spoil, but things where, like, I noticed it while watching it the first time through, and I didn't clock that that's probably something that's going to come back. It's just like a moment that I was like, huh, that's a weird moment from that actor. And I was like, well, thinking like maybe that I don't, that actor just like had an off day with that line reading or something. And then it came back and I was like, oh my God. Like, he's so good at holding the thing up right in front of the audience and going like, do you see it? Do you see it? And then bringing it back later and us going, he totally showed it to us. Like, he totally put it right in front of our faces. I just think it's like, it's a neat little magic trick that Johnson does with these films that's really fun. And I really enjoyed Wake Up Dead Man. I can't wait to get into a deeper conversation about it with Kramer on the full episode of the podcast where we'll get into spoilers. So stay tuned for that. And I'm going to turn it over to my co-host now. Take it away, Kramer.
Thanks, buddy. Okay. Wake Up Dead Man. My first thoughts on Wake Up Dead Man. This was a ton of fun. I really, really enjoyed this movie, and I got to see it in a theater. I think this movie needs to be seen in a theater, and I really want to get after Netflix for kind of, going against the theater model, because I very much loved seeing this movie, and this is a movie that should be seen in a theater. I'm going to get into that more with Austin, but I had so much fun at the theater. It was packed. I mean, this is a limited run, so I don't know how many people could even get the chance to see it in a theater. But this was a great theater experience. Everybody around me was having a lot of fun. Everybody was laughing. Everybody was gasping. Everybody was doing what the movie wanted them to do. And this movie, just like the last two, just like Knives Out and just like Glass Onion, there's a lot of twists, a lot of turns, a lot of, scary moments, fun moments, exciting moments, funny moments. And I thought this was a great time. And, if you like the first two, you're going to love this one. I really love this movie. I do think it cheated a little bit. You kind of like, they show some things. I was like, okay, well, there'd be no way to know that. But in a murder mystery, it's fine. I was fine with it. It wasn't anything that was egregious. Just there's definitely sometimes it's like, okay, well, that was a little, but it's a good time. And it's, some people might be able to figure out the ending. I was able to figure out a part of it, at least to some degree, not a ton, but there were a few hints that can give things away. But it's a lot of fun, even just trying to dissect it and figure everything out. Now, just like our last film, Eternity, so Eternity is about the afterlife, but they don't really go into religious themes. This movie is extremely religious. It simultaneously criticizes religion and praises it for what it can be. The main character is a priest, and it goes into many, many religious themes. And Benoit Blanc, he is not religious. I would say he's either agnostic or something along those lines. So it was really, really interesting. I thought it did a really great job of towing the line. I'm sure that there's going to be people who, on the religious side, me being a more religious person, I appreciated it. I thought it was really good, and I really liked where it came from. But some people who may be more on the religious side might find it offensive in some areas. But I overall, I mean, I thought it was really good, and I'm actually very interested to talk to Austin about it, because it's very similar to our situations. I'm much more religious. He is not, but we get along. Obviously, we're best friends. We can get along and we can talk about these things. And so I'm excited to talk to him about it and see what he thinks. But overall, really, really great film. A lot of fun, a lot of funny parts. And I think if you like the other ones, you should go see this. If you have the chance to see it in the theater, go and see it. This is where the movie should be seen. So if you see it, comment below and let us know what you thought, because I'm really excited to talk about this movie with people. Luckily, I was able to talk to someone at my work about it. We had the same thoughts on it, but I'm really excited to get everybody's opinion on what they think. So hopefully you enjoyed it, but let us know what you thought, and we'll see you next time.